All right, then thanks everybody for joining. And I'll do a very, very brief, the briefest of introductions because I want to turn the floor over quickly to our gathered brain trust here of current PhD students, um, two candidates and two students who are about to begin their PhD studies. Um, it's a really it's always a pleasure to get this group back together. It's a stellar group. We have a few, at least three, in this cohort of CSUSB history um, alumni who are not able to join us right now. They may join a little bit late, and if they do, that's great. Um, but for now, we've got four CSUSB history alumni who are heading into PhD programs or are currently in PhD programs in their fourth and fifth years, respectively. Um, and so I'm going to toss the floor in just a second to them. Joanna Gonzalez, who is finishing her MA studies, she's also a BA graduate of CSUSB, finishing her MA program right now, and she just got the good news from UC Riverside that she'll be headed there for her PhD, and her advisor just jumped in. Nice to see you, Professor Karp. And also Thomas Donovan. He is at the same stage where he is. Well, oh, no, sorry, rather, he finished his MA at CSUSB 2 years ago. Is that correct, Thomas? 2 years ago, or
Yeah, I think it was 2023.
2023, so 3 years ago, and did his undergrad at UCLA before that, and he is headed back to the UC, to UC Irvine, into their history program. Christina Cardinal is a CSUSB BA and MA graduate as well. Um, and she was in the first MA cohort, finishing in 2022. Does that mean your BA was 2020, Christina? 2020 BA. And she is now in the history department at UC Riverside, in the fourth year of her PhD program. And then Rocio Gomez is in the fifth year of her PhD program at UC Riverside. She is also a CSUSB BA graduate, and she's going to remind me of the year of that. I'm going to guess 2014.
2016.
2016. Oh, that's right, 2016. That was, of course, a big year in current events. Um, all right. So I'm going to toss the floor to the four of them. I think actually Professor Karp may also have some thoughts here in terms of graduate school. I know he has a habit of sending his students off to PhD programs successfully. One of them, Jose Castro, is now at UCLA. Um, Interestingly, Jose is in a Chicanics studies program at UCLA. So that's an interdisciplinary study program, different, a little bit different from a history program. And then also we have a student at UC Santa Barbara, Alexander Serrano, who is in their East Asian Studies interdisciplinary PhD program. So I just wanted to note that at the outset, the four current PhD folks that we have in are headed into or are currently in history programs, but there are also these other interdisciplinary programs that could be related to gender, ethnic studies, American studies, East Asian studies, lots of other fields that have these PhD programs that you can go into, especially if you have an interdisciplinary interest in, say, sociology, anthropology, literature, film studies, all these other things you can bring to those programs as well. As we all know in history, we are also omnivorous, so that's why we're a good fit for those programs, but that's why also we already do a lot of those things in our studies, and so it's a natural sort of move in there. Okay, um, Joanna and Thomas maybe can lead us off, and then to Christina and Rocio. Um, Talk a little bit about your PhD application process, um, and that is going to be the focus today of looking at PhD programs. But we'll have time also to talk about other grad school experiences. Okay, Joanna, please take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. Hi, everybody. I am Joanna Gonzalez. As Dr. Murray says, I am still a current CSUSB student in the graduate program, MA in history. Graduated with BA in history pre-credential concentration, meaning, of course, I probably had some sort of want or desire to be a teacher. Um, However, that just ended up not being in my cards in regards to like being in the secondary education. But yeah, I just recently applied and got into UCR, and that was a whirlwind of an application. I actually was not planning on doing Hey, thank you, Dr. Murray. I was not planning on doing a PhD. After I was done with the MA, that was not really what I thought I would want. But after a lot of thinking, a lot of reflecting, I realized that the worst thing that I could do for myself was not apply and never know if I would ever be able to make it. So I talked to Dr. Lorimer, Michelle Lorimer, who is my primary advisor, and Dr. Karp is my secondary advisor. But talking to Dr. Lorimer, she definitely helped me and guided me through this application. I went up to her in September of last year, and applications were due in December. And I told her, I feel like I have this strong, I guess, urge to apply, even if I don't really want it. I don't know, like maybe I do want it and I just don't know it yet. It was just a strong, like, I need to apply at least. So her and I knocked it out by the end of October. And of course, that application looked like it was a 15-page historiography, but I actually ended up not using the 15-page historiography that I had written with her. I used my 50, is it 5850, Dr. Murray? Yeah, okay. I used my 5850 paper that I had written the semester before last year with Dr. Murray, and that one was on Chinese cowboys. It was super random topic, but I used that paper instead. I also had my three recommendations, which were, of course, Dr. Murray, Dr. Lorimer, and then Dr. Tiffany Jones, who's in the South African department, well, South Africa history. Um, but I used them three because, of course, I had really close connections with them, and I think that's a huge plus is, of course, having connections with professors, especially with your main advisor. You want those connections because they will help you throughout this whole process. And even before I had spoken to Dr. Lorimer, I did speak to Dr. Jones a while back about potentially doing it, potentially applying and being a PhD student, but it was still, I don't really know, not sure. Um, but yeah, so it was the three recommendation letters, and it was also a updated curriculum vitae and a kind of like a just like a letter about why you want to go to UCR, why you would like to be part of the department, what basically what do you have to contribute to our plate? And that was I think that was probably the hardest thing to write. I didn't have a lot on my CV, and a lot of it I did put on that letter, which was just, I was a full-time student, full-time worker. I didn't really have time to do any extracurriculars, but going to UCR, I believe that I thought that maybe that would give me the opportunity to really give my all to this passion that I have. And thankfully, I guess it worked. I guess it all worked out. And I did get a pretty good stipend on top of, I guess, the tuition coverage. I was a little bit confused about that, but UCR has a really great advisor. I'm not so sure what position she's at. Her name's Alicia. She's really awesome at explaining things. And UCR was the only place that I applied to just because of how local I am. I am located in Banning, and I just didn't have the means to uproot my family and take them across to Arizona or to Utah or New Mexico, which is where my area of study is mostly at. but thankfully I got it and it's been working out.
Thank you, Joanna. I'm going to toss to Thomas in just a second, but I'm going to ask our UCR veterans, can you give us the job title, please, of the person Joanna mentioned? Because that is important. It's wonderful when a history department has an army of 40 faculty or 30 faculty, which is a little different from CSU, but they also will have department coordinators and they will have specifically graduate studies coordinators, not just faculty, but as staff, which I think is the person Joanna was referring to. Is that correct? Graduate coordinator, staff member.
Yeah, she's the graduate student advisor,
Great.
Alicia
Grad.
Carlisle.
All right. Graduate student advisor. Nice and a really good idea to get to know those folks. Um, a lot of great points here. I'm going to toss right to Thomas, but I love the idea of the changing plans. Please pay attention. This idea of having a very clear idea of what's going to happen next, and then something surprising and very cool and interesting happens. That is something that I know very smart, independent minded, successful undergraduate students have a clear idea of what's going to happen. And sometimes something really interesting and surprising happens. And especially when you're well advised and you have good guidance and you know what you're going to do next, these things can come up in a really surprising way. So that's a theme I know that emerges in these. I just wanted to say that. Thomas, please tell us a little bit about your experience.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, hello everybody. So I don't know how orthodox my experience is because I did not apply right out of finishing my MA. In fact, I would have been surprised if I got into any program finishing my MA because although I did well in my MA, I did not necessarily have the strongest transcript as an undergrad. I was rather young and immature. So I went right into working. I started teaching English overseas in France, and then I was able to get a job teaching community college classes, undergraduate history classes in Menifee. And I did that for about a year and a half before applying to PhD programs. Like Joanna, I wasn't sure if that was something I wanted to do. I toyed with law school, with an MBA, and the costs of both of those programs were rather shocking and off-putting. And what's really nice about a PhD program is for someone like me who's already working, you're going back to school, but you're also in a sense being hired. You're going to be receiving a modest salary, but a salary nevertheless, and you really shouldn't have to get in debt to get this PhD program, which is wonderful. So I applied to just UCs in the Southern California area. I wanted to work on specifically Francophone history because that is my heritage and I speak the French language. I decided to settle on the island of Mauritius, a Indian Ocean possession of France in the 18th century. And I'm glad I did because I did this a bit on accident, but Mauritius is something that hasn't been studied a great deal. And so when I applied to some of these programs, a few professors were quite excited because they would have a chance to work on something that hasn't been covered extensively. And that's the first piece of advice I think is worth giving is that if you want to study something that has been done to death, a lot of professors won't get excited and won't really look at your application seriously. I was told that frankly, just straight from one of the professors who interviewed me, said, if you wanted, for example, to study the French aristocracy in the 17th century, I wouldn't have picked up your application because what else is there to say about this? Unless you really said something that was new or that has been missed, it wouldn't really be advantageous for me or interesting. So that's the first thing is to try to find something that connects to you personally, because that's another thing he liked is that my topic connected to me personally, and I wasn't just coming to it from the outside, that I had family and friends in Mauritius and that I lived in Mauritius. That was very appealing to him. And then the next thing to keep in mind, I believe, is to look at the professors you want to work with, look at their faculty pages, look at what they publish, because I specifically tailored my application to try to be compatible with their research and their field of interest because they have their careers and they want to work with people who can help them and who they can help and who are going to be addressing topics that interest them. So if you apply to a school, and even if you have an amazing application and your field of interest doesn't really match with anyone there, it's unlikely for you to get in. And it's also, even if you do get in, it's unlikely that you're going to get a great deal of help. And it may even hurt you later on. I was discussing this with a professor at UCR about how if you go to a great school and you work with someone who doesn't really work on what you're working on, later on, people might wonder, well, did you really learn as much as you should have learned since you weren't working with someone who could really tutor you in this subject? So that's something to keep in mind. Let's see. So I think those are two of the most important things because, my transcript really wasn't great, but because I presented a topic that got a few professors excited, they were willing to give me a chance. The next thing that I had to do in my applications, I had to do a few interviews. I don't know how common that is. I know this year was particularly competitive given some of the financial issues some schools are having. They're accepting fewer students. So if you apply this year or next year and you don't get in, I was told to not take it personally because it's just very difficult right now. And you can try again and again. There was one school I didn't get into, and he told the professor interviewed told me, apply next year because I think we would be able to get you in next year. So even if I didn't get into UCI, I would have had another path later on. Just had to be a little patient. In these interviews, I think it's important to keep in mind that you're being interviewed because they saw something they like and they want to let you in, but they have a few things they want clarification of. So don't be nervous if you get an interview. It's actually better than getting just a job interview because you're already on the short list. They're already really considering you. So you just need to answer their questions the best you can and see what happens. One of the last things I'll mention is that I noticed, I got interviews for a few different schools, and the school that let me in was the school that the professor interviewed me was ladder faculty. So he had a lot of say in the application process. There was one school I applied to, the professor who interviewed me I believe he just started. And he wanted me to go, and he said, I'm going to advocate for you in the meeting, but later on, he emailed and said I was essentially overruled, so I couldn't let you in. So that's something to keep in mind. Look at some of the professors you're going to be, you write their names on your applications, the one you want to work with. If you can find one has a lot of sway, who has a laundry list of publications, who's been there for many years, just the nature of these institutions, they're going to have more say over who gets in and who doesn't. And maybe that's something to keep in mind. And yeah, if you have any other specific questions, I'd be happy to answer. But I think those are some of the things I learned because Joanna covered, I think, a really solid foundation of what you need to do. And these are just some of the other things I noticed during my application.
That's excellent. Thank you, Thomas. You gave us a lot to think about. The metaphor I like, because my kid's been watching these pirate movies, is the grappling hooks of like a boarding party, where you want to get your grappling hook over the edge to pull yourself up. And that means a contact with somebody like the staff member that Joanna mentioned. That's a good point. But then also a faculty member who's there and ready to work with you. And indeed, sometimes an assistant faculty or associate faculty will be part of the woodwork already and will be very well established there and maybe on the verge of tenure or something like that. But sometimes they'll be brand new and their enthusiasm is great, but a couple things. First of all, they can be overruled. Second of all, also, junior faculty can be fairly nomadic, where they get an offer somewhere else, and then they might not have the clout to take you with them. That's something that another student did have happen, Sarah West, who's not able to join us today. But she did have that experience where a faculty member took her as essentially as a kind of apprentice from one institution to another. So this does happen, but that it's less likely to happen, I would say, with the junior faculty. We did have another of our crew join today, Jose Castro Padilla, and if it's okay, I want to have him jump in next because he's sort of we're kind of working our way up in seniority, if that's okay, Christina Rocio. Jose, if you want to share a couple thoughts, if you have some initial thoughts, Jose is in the Chicana and Chicano studies program. As I mentioned, not all of our crew are in history departments. He's in the interdisciplinary program there, being advised by a historian. But Jose, do you want to jump in and tell us a little bit about your experience so far at UCLA?
Yeah, yeah. Once again, thank you for having me. Of course, it's a pleasure to be here because I love Cal San Bernardino, especially how much you guys helped me to go into my PhD program. And I wanna follow up with this conversation about connecting with the professors. One of the things it happened when I was doing my applications. What I did is I went to conference. I went to American Historical Association conference over here in LA. I mean in San Francisco, and the Western Historical Association here in LA. And that's where I met Robert Chao Romero, who is my advisor. And I talked to him. I talked about what I was working on, and he's a historian, but he is the head of the of Chicana Studies program. So he told me, apply for the Chicana Studies. We're gonna look to your application, and you can work with me. Let's see how you can work with me. So that's what I did. Of course, I didn't want it. I was like, nah, that's kind of interdisciplinary. I'm not into the Chicana Studies. But pretty much once I got into the interview, they talked to me. I knew about the program, how the program is interdisciplinary. So I will be a historian, but working, learning new way of studies like sociology, anthropology, theology, different frameworks. So it is it, that thing helped me to continue with my education. Of course, I still working with Robert, who is my advisor. He's a historian, and pretty much my work is in history. So thanks to these connections that I had, and I met several professors from this department, it helped me out to post my applications, because it was kind of funny because I met them before my turning my application. When I got into the interview process, all of them were there. So all of them knew already who uh, uh, they learned about me before the interview. Pretty much the only thing I had to talk to was to the head of the department and the head of the humanities department, who was in charge about the applications. So pretty much it helped a lot to connect with the professors, depending where you want to go, where you want to study. And of course, you had to look into the professor that have similar uh, topic that you're working on. So that helps a lot. So that's my pretty much my suggestion.
Thank you, Jose. That's great, and I'm glad to hear things are going well there. Um, I'll move on to Christina and then Rocio for some remarks. If we don't have time for questions, for too many questions, um, you can always reach out to me, and I know where to find these guys if you have questions for them. Um, but in the meantime, I think we're covering a lot of ground very quickly here, a lot of the really essential things you got to know. So continuing sort of making our way up the seniority ladder here. Christina, please take it away.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So, yeah, just to echo a couple things that everyone's mentioned, finding faculty, and that can be as easy as like looking, okay, like, you want to apply to UT Austin, go to the UT Austin History Department, look at the people, and check out their faculty list. There's I work on suffrage in the American West and the racial politics of suffrage. So it's actually kind of hard for me to find like one person that works on suffrage, especially during my time period. It tends to be more national. So for me, I think I kind of like stand out a little differently, compared to everyone else because I don't actually work with an advisor that does exactly what I do. So my broad research is the American West and like women in the American West. So when I was looking, for faculty, I was really interested in UCR because they had a lot, like we have so many American Westernists. Like we are such a huge American West department. So that just gives already so many opportunities to look at the American West through the lens of gender, through the lens of different races, et cetera. So I kind of just like sent out a cold call to a lot of the professors, like some women, a professor that was working in the progressive era, multiple professors that were working in the American West, and then I also do public history. And so I just like sent some cold emails, hey, I'm Chris, like, I'm at Cal State San Bernardino. My advisor is Dr. Thomas Long. He recommended I reach out to you. This is kind of my area of interest. Like, I'd love to, gauge your interest on, are you accepting students? Et cetera. And so, I had a couple phone calls and I think one Zoom meeting, and they all went really well. And then my main advisor at the time, he pretty much after our Zoom meeting was like, yeah, I want you as a student, like let me. So he kind of helped me actually work on my application. So if you're really lucky, you might find a really generous scholar who's like down, like you're it for me, I'm it for you, and you're kind of soulmate advisor. Since then, I've actually switched advisors just because of like retiring and stuff. And even now, my current advisor, he's like the leading like Spanish American historian, right? He's not really working in progressive era suffrage. But it's nice to have someone who gets like at least so you can it's amazing if you find someone, your specialist, right? You're doing like South Florida and you get to work with all 100 Tchaikovsky. Amazing. But a lot of us aren't that lucky. So sometimes, we kind of have to negotiate our own stuff under these bigger advisors who are really just your champions. Those are the people that are going to help you get publications. Those are the people who are listening, kind of ears to the ground for opportunities and things like that for you. So don't worry too much if you're like, well, I really want to look at this. And, I'm not really finding someone in any of the universities I'm looking at. So that would be kind of my first thing. But don't be afraid. I really recommend sending a cold email, introducing yourself, because you never know how those Zoom meetings are going to go. Like someone else said, right? He might even be like, I don't have room today, like this year, but next year you should apply and we can make sure you're in the cohort. You never know. And you'll never know unless you try. And then I think the other big thing, at least that was really big for me when I was applying, was like money, right? Because I was working, like I went to Cal State, I worked full time. So for me and everyone's packaging is going to be different. I would honestly like if you get multiple PhD, acceptance is good for you. Then you get to kind of be picky. But I was given a really generous offer. So I got a whole first year fellowship, and then I was guaranteed like 4 years of stipends after that, including a summer stipend, which a lot of people in our department don't get. And so basically like that money more or less starts like the month after you start in the fall. Sometimes UTA, sometimes you have a fellowship, so you're just taking your classes. And again, Alicia, hopefully the university will have a graduate advisor or a graduate student person coordinator like we have here, Alicia, who kind of breaks down how the money works. But I was able to like quit my job and just do this, and I've only really done academic stuff. I've adjuncted at Cal State San Bernardino, so there's definitely like, if you can find connections, you can find gigs. Applying for fellowships and all that stuff is part of the process, but you don't really have to worry about that until you're in it, until you have a seat at the table. So I don't know. That's kind of my main advice. Don't be too intimidated. If you can't find someone that works specifically in your field, be friendly. A kind of saying like I like to say around here is like closed mouths don't get fed, right? We like to be timid. These are like advisors that are doctors, they're published scholars, but folk are just folk, and just send them an email, see how it goes. And sometimes you'll really click with someone. Like I think I've dog sat like half the faculty, like I've dog sat for like half the faculty here. So be yourself, and don't be afraid to, shoot your shot.
That's really great. I was just making a note here as you were talking of one of my favorite things to say is to make your needs known. That's one of my favorite things to remind students of. And I was a graduate student who did not have any kind of financial background that would help me do anything. So I was looking for odd jobs when I was first getting started, and just to make ends meet. And then I explained that to my faculty advisors, and they said, well, you shouldn't be working in a furniture warehouse right now. You should be I can find you work as a research assistant. And they did. And that was much more productive. It was less hazardous, and it was more, more along the lines of what I was doing. And I only learned that by telling them what I needed. Um, so you can do that in the application process. You can do that in the, once you're in the door. But remember, and this also goes for current BA students at CSUSB or MA students, make your needs known, and that's connected to the other big piece of advice: go to office hours. You may have a very, very clear plan of what you're going to do, but that doesn't mean it can't help to talk and meet with your faculty uh, and learn more about the options that are open to you. Okay, Rocio, please jump in.
Hey everyone, I'm Rocio. I'm a fifth year PhD candidate at UC Riverside. I think everyone has succinctly and rather wonderfully already summarized the experience of applying and all that. And I thought, if it's okay with y'all, to share some of the challenges that some people might find as they're navigating the second year onward into a PhD program. So one of the things that I've had to do was, I've also had somewhat of an unorthodox experience. Like Thomas, I graduated 2016 with my BA in history. And then I immediately started working as an intern and as a park ranger with the National Park Service. And it was my work there that kind of inspired me to pursue graduate school with as a public historian, just to sort of, speaking of intentions, I was very clear with everybody I talked to at all the schools I applied that my interest was not to remain in academia, but to take the training there and put it back into public lands, in a way to sort of address that chasm between that exists between tribal communities and the actual National Park Service or Public Lands Administration, which I was just very dissatisfied with when I worked at these different places, and so I thought, doing the work and then eventually giving back or contributing to that sort of space of reckoning is where I belong, and I'm still pursuing that. But there are a few different challenges that come along. One thing, real quick, that everybody mentioned was, or some people mentioned, was the summer funding. So I didn't get any summer funding in my contract, but I did already have connections in the National Park Service. So what I was able to do was reach out to people that were at the head of interpretation. I was like, do you have anything for the summer? Yeah, go ahead and apply. And, just we'll get you a place to stay or just find a place to live. So I shared in the chat a document with a list of all of the internships and fellowship programs that I could find that are adjacent to history. If anybody's interested in historic preservation, interpretation, the Great Basin Institute has a lot of positions open for that are like 6 months or more to be a historian at some of these places within the Great Basin area. So some of this stuff you can find for summer work, and you would, get funding for the summer, so to speak, while receiving training and behind the scenes work at the way history is done at public sites of public history or public learning. One of the things that I encountered in my program was sort of this misalignment of myself and one of my advisors and what I wanted to pursue and what they were guiding me to do. I didn't feel as though it was taking me to where I wanted to go. So eventually, I ended up switching advisors for my Native American studies, and now my Native American history advisor is Dr. Willie Bauer, who came from UNLV to UC Riverside, and he's fantastic. So there's sometimes that advocate for yourself enough to be like, I know where you want to take your research, but sometimes as much as someone wants to guide you towards another direction, if you know that's like, I knew where I wanted to take my research because it pertains to a particular tribal community in northern Arizona, specifically the park rangers that have come out of that community working towards a specific park. And an advisor is sort of, in a way you feel, is steering you away from that. I think it's important for you to recognize they may be an authority on this, but this is not the way I want to pursue my studies, or I don't feel comfortable. And so I had to shift, and it's been working out since, and that's perfectly fine. One of the other challenges is that you will have to teach. You will be TAing I think the greatest challenge in that I found is balancing my work as a student, writing. Now that I'm writing the dissertation, it's finding time. It's, just to be completely transparent with everybody. It's been difficult putting the time towards writing the dissertation. And I think that's because I've never wanted to be a teacher, so I or remain in academia. So I'm finding it difficult to sort of reconcile the work that I have to do um, with what I need to do and all this stuff moving forward. That being said, the students, the undergraduates coming in are post-COVID, and it's a different game. It's a whole different um, human experience. It's a whole new generation of human experience that you're dealing with. And so the advent of AI, sort of using it, a lot of students do use it to outsource their intellectual labor and writing papers and stuff. And so navigating this and understanding that not all students are the same, so you have to provide multiple options. If you want to do well, if you want your students to do well, at least in my case, I found that I've had to resort to different avenues to ensure they all get what they need. But sometimes that does clash with what I need to do on my end as a student, right? To produce what is expected of me. So be aware that if you're going in and you don't want to remain in academia, there could be some challenges, and that's just being fully transparent, because it's hard, and then you find yourself. I'm in this phase where I'm looking for fellowships or stipends, any sort of funding that will remove me from my teaching responsibilities and fund me to do writing. So it's that aspect of frustration. I started feeling like year three, year four, and this is not to discourage anybody from pursuing this path, but it's to sort of offer the spectrum of experiences that come with that. With what's expected of you, because like Thomas said, you when you interview and you get accepted, in a way, you're getting hired to produce certain work for them, which is to teach the larger classes or help teach the larger classes. Yeah, and then just one last thing, because I find myself as a public historian too. At the beginning of my program, I started 2021. I remember hearing professors saying, "Oh, the public historians are going to do well because they're at this point in time." A lot of us were aware of the limited job, the limited aspects, right, of the job market in academia. And this was just the way the conversations were happening when I started the program. And I remember other professors saying, "Oh, the public historians they're going to do well. They're going to be able to find jobs." But then, of course, we have the executive order that Trump signed last year, restoring truth and sanity to America, which has been really dismantling the foundation on which a lot of sites of public learning are able to present hard historical truths. Because somehow the executive order, if you look at the language, it's really ridiculous. But that other part of my the realm of job opportunities that I'm also looking forward to in the future right now are sort of imperiled because of that. And so it's pursuing academia and pursuing work with public lands. I don't know if any of you are interested in probably you are in academia, but these avenues. But this is, as personal as these struggles are, I know there are a lot of people who do want to take this training, receive their credentials or PhD training, and sort of use that to help leverage the sort of authority in a field where that could benefit a underprivileged community, like tribal communities or others, and things of this nature, or historically marginalized communities, at least in my case. So it's a lot that will come. There's funding, there's advising, but know that you should feel empowered to stay the course in the path that you are pursuing, and understand that even with all of this external noise, there's still, like, I know I'm pursuing this because this is something that I feel accountable for. right? My specific dissertation. I'm doing it on Southern Paiute Park Rangers, a Pipe Spring National Monument, and all of the interpretive labor they put in to reincorporate the indigenous narrative there, because it was established as a Mormon pioneer site. But the work that they put in sort of put that monument on the map as a place of Southern Paiute sovereignty, cultural authority, if you will. And so looking at this stuff, but I feel accountable for that community and for that work too. And that's what's keeping me, that's what's pushing me to continue forward, right? Because there's a lot of external factors that can come in and discourage you and whatnot. But it's, if you're in it for something that is truly, for work that is really valuable, and is going to benefit not just you, right? I think that's really special, and it's something that you have to hold on to. But those are some of the things that I just to share this sort of aside of all the challenges that you may be facing when you're well into, 2 or 3 years into the program. And every experience may be different, but that's, there's all of these dynamics.
I think this is really great, and we did this. I remember last year we heard sort of all sides of this. This is not a session to say everybody should apply right now. Everybody should be in a PhD program, and getting this sort of obviously thrilling aspect of PhD students who are thriving, like the ones we're hearing from here, is excellent, and also hearing about the challenges that you're going to navigate, and whether it's these ones of priorities, or as Christina noted, of finances. These are things for you to take into consideration, absolutely. And finding advisors, charting your own path, advocating for yourself. This big question I just wanted to echo of balance of priorities is very, very important. Generally in academia, you already have that balance between research and teaching. So even if you are going to sort of stay on that path, that balance between research and teaching is important. And then Rocio notes this other public history path of potentially being outside of that. And we do have another session in this series about state parks and national parks that's going to come up. And our national park ranger was a PhD in history. So I want to urge everybody to join that and see how these worlds can be bridged. In just a minute, I'll throw the slate of events in there. There's going to be Dr. Adam Dean, who's at Hemis Springs right now. But just to sort of drop his name in there, he was I think University of Virginia professor, or at another school in Virginia. Anyway, I can't remember. But he is now at Hemis Springs as a park ranger. So that I like the idea of drawing those connections between that world. But I just wanted to quickly say, and then put Professor Karp on the spot a little if he wants to jump in to add any thoughts. And obviously anybody can join, raise hand, or welcome everybody in to ask questions in the last 10 minutes. But this question of balance was really clearly articulated to me when, well, actually I was lucky not to be the one, but we were in our seminar at UCSD in my graduate program, and it was our Monday morning seminar that you have 3 years in a row with this really tight cohort. Every Monday morning, everybody would be in there for a 3-hour seminar, and somebody came in late, and I won't name names, but they came in late, and the instructor, and again I won't name names, gave a big long speech, and it was actually nurturing ultimately in the end, but it was a big long speech about priorities. And the instructor said, "Would you ever be late to a section that you were a TA for?" And the student said, "No, never." And they said, "Well, this is where you need to be putting all your priorities. This is the thing that you should not be late for." And they were sort of the whole big conversation that then evolved from that was the balance between the research and the intense study that you're doing as a PhD student and the professional experience you're gaining as a teacher, as an educator. And it was a big, we had this big sort of project, because obviously they're both equally important, but that particular faculty member was saying, it should be something like 60-40, where, or maybe even 70-30, where you should be spending the lion's share of your time on your research and writing, and then you got to pay the bills, so you're doing this TA work as well. Now, that isn't to say you should phone it in with the TA work, but I think, as you'll find, it will take every minute that you give it. And that's just the nature of teaching, I think. That's the nature of teaching with care. It's going to take all your time if you let it. So what I think this professor was pushing against was the slippage that can happen where, and this is for Thomas and Joanna to be on the lookout for, the slippage that can happen where your TA work can take all the time. Of course, you should dedicate your efforts to it, but just be mindful that if you're a caring instructor, it will take all your time, and you have to somewhat be somewhat deliberate in the way that you cordon off or sort of quarantine that time and not let it spill into every other hour of your day. I just wanted to note that because the landscape of academia, the landscape of doctoral programs, is one in which you don't always have a template to budget your time, because you are one of a kind. All of you are one of a kind in the way that you chart your course, and you have to identify your own sources. Nobody else is going to be doing your research agenda. It's yours, and you need to figure out how much time you spend on it, how you do it. So there's an enormous level of responsibility and maturity and professionalism that's going to go in really in your first year, that's going to start taking hold. You don't have to get it all right the first time, but you do have to deliberately and conscientiously think about how you're budgeting your time. And if you can avoid it, don't work in a furniture warehouse. That's not an ideal situation. Michael, did you want to jump in? I don't see any hands, but everybody can jump into the chat or raise their hands. Do you have any thoughts to any sort of nuggets?
No, I appreciate that. No, I just wanted to be here and to like help be part of the discussion if people have specific questions or anything like that. And it's also just always, wonderful to make it to these when I can to hear how everybody's doing and see familiar faces and all that. So no, I'll hand it over to discussion and anything like that'd be great.
Thank you, Michael. Sam, jump in, please.
Hey guys, thanks for being here and helping all of us undergrads or grads students out. My question is, so I applied to one school this cycle. Um, and through that one, you kind of learn how to deal with like the whole application cycle and all that fun stuff. But also through talking to a variety of different professors and things of that nature that I was applying to, um, I kind of got recommended to go to a master's program right after. They just kind of said it would help, especially one of the people that works at UCLA said that I should try to go to UC for a master's program and things like that. And then David Eigler said that too. But then also I have advisors that were kind of helping me walk through the application process that said, like, if you don't need to, um, then why pay for it? And when, you could just go into a PhD program where you're not gonna collect debt. I just was kind of curious on your guys' thoughts on that.
Go ahead, Joanna. Yeah,
Okay.
everybody jump in.
I guess I'll just jump in. So I actually did go the MA route because I personally, coming out of my BA, I really did feel like I was not ready. I just didn't know what to expect out of a PhD program. So I did do the MA, obviously at CSUSB. I did know that if I had applied to UCR first, from what I was told, like the MA program is embedded into the PhD program. So you get it along the way, and it should be covered either way if they have the funding for it. But yes, going to CSUSB, I did not have the funding for it. I just worked. I've been working, and I'm so thankful that I'm in a situation where I was just able to pay in cash and I didn't have any school debt. But not everyone's circumstances like that. Um, But if you feel like you're unsure, I would say still just try it, even apply to a different program where you can get that funding. Because I know CSUSB, we have our applications are not going in this year, right, Dr. Murray? Yeah. Um, but yeah, definitely try going to some sort of program where you will get funding, especially if finances are going to be pretty tight.
Thomas, jump
Just
in.
to add on to that, because I as well went to an MA program before applying to a PhD program, I think it depends on your personal situation and how important finances are, and also how strong your undergraduate application is. I don't think I would have been intellectually ready to handle a PhD program in my early 20s after graduating from UCLA. And also, I went to school during COVID, and my transcript really wasn't as good as it could have been. It wasn't horrible, but I don't think I would have gotten into a program that suited me without the training I received at in my MA program. They have a really nice program at CSUSB. I don't have any regrets going to it. Again, you might just have to work. I worked while attending the classes and ended up getting through without getting horribly into debt. And some schools are more expensive than others. If I recall correctly, CSUSB, they don't rob you blind. Like some places are really expensive, and you have to keep that in mind. But it depends on where you are. But if you get into an MA program, you get through it, your PhD program might end up being shorter because you get some of the classes waived. So that's something you have to think about in regards to your own circumstances, but you're not by any means getting behind or going down the wrong path by doing an MA program first. If that helps you get into a better school, it could pay off in the long run.
Thank you, Thomas. Rocio, please jump in.
Yeah. So I got into the program in 2021, and I specifically pursued a PhD program because I knew I was going to get paid. I knew that being accepted would be like, it's almost employment, right? You're going to be teaching. We give you these resources in return. You offer this service, which is teaching. And so I didn't really intend to get an MA. I didn't get a master's. I just had my bachelor's from 2016. But the work I did as a public historian with the National Park Service, I had done videos for the park, like media, exhibit work, and things like this. And that working experience, I think, helped me leverage. I leveraged that in my application, and that's what the public historians at like Dr. Kathy Gudis, Dr. Megan Asaka were interested in when I applied. So I went in just with the bachelor's and all of this experience. And in a way, it was cool because I did all this on the ground, hands-on work, and then as a student, I was able to apply a theory to all of the work that I was already doing. But I specifically apply, and it's because I heard Jeremy say this when I was an undergrad in class. He's like, or if you want to, fully funded grad program, just go get your PhD. And I was like, I'm not going to need that. But then after, of course, life happened. I did the Park Service. I'm like, oh, I think this is a space where I can use that training for this. And I said, I personally did not understood that as opposed to applying to a master's, I was going to be fully funded with a PhD. And that worked for me because I also didn't have health insurance for a long time. So I'm able to, as a student, get health insurance, got my PhD. 2 years in, I got my master's. And at UC Riverside, they have in the department, they have this thing where you can either submit a thesis for your MA. In my case, all of the papers I had written and all of my seminars went towards this one monument that I'm now doing my case study dissertation on. And so I compiled all of them together, submitted them as a portfolio. And with that portfolio, I got my master's in history. So I didn't have to write an extra thesis. It just happened that all of the papers I wrote were on different aspects of the same place. And then now that benefits me because one of those papers is going to help me, has already done half of the writing for one of my chapters for me. And so that That's more for those who are more security minded. Even from just a bachelor's, you can apply to a PhD program. And then some, like Christina said, some programs like UCR, they have that master's embedded in there. Or I think someone else mentioned that the master's is embedded in there. You can get it on the way while being funded for if your end goal is a PhD program.
Thanks for those notes. Those are really specific. In the American mode, for the most part, when you get into a PhD program, you're going to do what's called coursework and that is essentially, not essentially, that is an MA. You're going to get a degree, and it's going to say Master of Arts. Um, Now, an interesting thing with Jose and also with Alexander Serrano is that they got an MA in history, and now they're going into interdisciplinary programs where they will get an MA in those programs that are not necessarily history MAs. I'm not sure about the configurations, but I did the opposite. I got into an MA program in East Asian Studies, paid through the nose, and just finished. Luckily, I got the last of the student debt relieved for public service loan forgiveness before I think they're going to try to cancel that. So don't count on that, depending on where things go. But the interesting thing about these interdisciplinary programs is having the MA potentially in history or the MA in an interdisciplinary program, and then switching to the opposite in your PhD program, where you would then have two MAs, one in that either that history or interdisciplinary program, and then a PhD in the next one. So it's it's interesting to sort of mix and match there, but then also um, note what Christina said about a significant number of those credits going to your course of study. Um, and that takes some advocacy, but when you're in a school like UCR or Jose and UCLA, often you have pretty good sort of dialogue there in terms of saying, okay, obviously this fits and this can sort of Tetris into this slot, and you can move along. Jose, please jump back in, and then we'll move towards wrapping up in just a couple minutes.
Mhm. Yeah, yes, just to follow up your comment, of course, I have my MA. I did my MA in history to boost my GPA. So that's one of the reasons. But also, in UCLA, I'm going to get a second master in Chicano studies. And as I say, the methodology is different because I'm approaching more into sociology and urban history, so a little bit different than history. And I usually talk to the people in the Department of History, to the people in the Department of History, and I talk to them like about the classes. Pretty much the classes or the books they are reading are the one we read in the master program in San Bernardino, which is yeah, like I was like yeah, I read that one, I got that one. So it is wonderful to know about that. And pretty much my background and in the master is the same thing that they are doing in UCLA, and that way I'm focused more into different mythology, different approach. Like I say, more into sociology, urban history, and anthropology. So a little bit different than what I learned in my master in San Bernardino.
That's reassuring to hear that you see a lot of resonance there in terms of the sort of foundational texts. We started a couple minutes late and we're ending a couple minutes late, so that fits. I want to open it to anybody for final comments. These things always fly by. We could talk for 3 hours, I think, and have a really productive time here. But thanks to all the undergrads who jumped in, and obviously thanks to our alumni who are now either just embarking on or already thriving in their doctoral programs. Joanna, I'm going to toss it to you for the final word. Did you have one more bit of wisdom for everybody?
Yeah, I did. Back to your question, Samuel. Right out of undergrad, I also still wasn't sure if I was good enough for an MA or if I still had the capacity to do an MA program. And I did take a year off between graduating with my BA and then going into the MA program. And in that year off, I did learn a lot about myself. I learned more about what specifically my interest is than what I had actually what I thought I was going to be into coming out of my BA, if that makes sense. So I found out more of like, okay, this is where I belong. Like, this is what really gets me excited. This is really what's going to help me out and help me thrive. So, I mean, if you need to take a gap year, don't be afraid. Gap year was amazing. Like somebody commented, like it was really helpful. And it definitely helped build a pretty good financial foundation. Yeah.
That's great advice. Thank you. And if anybody else wants to jump in for final word, please either just unmute or raise hands. Um, this is always a really great pleasure. It's an honor to catch up with my former students, alumni who are doing such amazing work. It's really exciting to hear from you all. Obviously, always nice to see Michael um, and students like Sam. Thank you for joining us. Um, Thanks, everybody. I'm going to follow up with you all. I'll send you all a very formal letter that you can put in your files, in your professional files. Um, Thank you, Joanna, Rocio, Thomas, Christina, Jose. It's really, really a pleasure to catch up with you. Maybe we should start doing this every semester so we don't have to wait an entire year. Of course, then I'm presumptuously imposing on your very busy schedules, but it's just such a lot of fun for me to catch up with you. So keep up the excellent work. I'm going to send out an email to you and maybe do a little department news item, sort of where are they now behind the music, kind of a profile on everybody and hear how you're doing. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye,
We'll wrap up.
Jeremy.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Jeremy.
Yeah. And feel free to reach out any of the students if you guys want to chat more. I'm happy to chat with anybody. Bye.
Yeah,
Yes.
likewise. Take care,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys. Thanks, everybody.